remarkable institution. But most of all, congratulations to the class of 2016. I come here for a simple reason: to finally settle this pork roll versus Taylor ham question. I'm just kidding. There's not much that I'm afraid to take on in my final year in office, but I know better than to get in the middle of that debate. The truth is, Rutgers, I came here because you asked. Now, it's true that a lot of schools invite me to their commencement every year, but you are the first to launch a 3-year campaign. Emails, letters, tweets, YouTube videos. I even got 3 notes from the grandmother of your student body president. And I have to say, that really sealed the deal. That was smart, because I have a soft spot for grandmas. So I'm here, off exit 9, on the banks of the old Raritan, at the site of one of the original 9 colonial colonies. Winners of the first ever college football game. One of the newest members of the Big Ten. Home of what I understand to be a grease truck for a fat sandwich. Mozzarella sticks and chicken fingers on your cheesesteaks. I'm sure Michelle would approve. But somehow, you have survived such death-defying acts. You also survived the daily jockeying for buses from Livingston to Bush to Cook to Douglas and back again. I suspect that a few of you are trying to survive this afternoon after a late night at Old Queen's. You know who you are. But, however you got here, you made it. You made it. So today you join a long line of Scarlet Knights whose energy and intellect have lifted this university to heights its founders could not have imagined. 250 years ago, when America was still just an idea, a charter from the royal governor, Ben Franklin's son, established Queens College. A few years later, a handful of students gathered in a converted tavern for the first class. And from that first class in a pub, Rutgers has evolved into one of the finest research institutions in America. So this is a place where you 3D print prosthetic hands for children and devise rooftop wind arrays that can power entire office buildings with clean, renewable energy. Every day, tens of thousands of students come here to this intellectual melting pot, where ideas and cultures flow together among what might just be America's most diverse student body. Here in New Brunswick, you can debate philosophy with a classmate from South Asia in one class, and then strike up a conversation on the double E bus with a first-generation Latina student from Jersey City before sitting down for your site group project with a veteran who's going to school on the post-9/11 GI Bill. America converges here. And in so many ways, the history of Rutgers mirrors the evolution of America. The course by which we became bigger, stronger, and richer, and more dynamic, and a more inclusive nation. But America's progress has never been smooth or steady. Progress doesn't travel in a straight line. It zigs and zags, and fits and starts. Progress in America has been hard and contentious, and sometimes bloody. It remains uneven. And at times, for every 2 steps forward, it feels like we take 1 step back. Now, for some of you, this may sound like your college career. It sounds like mine, anyway. Which makes sense, because measured against the whole of human history, America remains a very young nation. Younger even than this university. But progress is bumpy. It always has been. But because of dreamers and innovators and strivers and activists, progress has been this nation's hallmark. I'm fond of quoting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." It bends towards justice. I believe that. But I also believe that the arc of our nation, the arc of the world, does not bend towards justice or freedom or equality or prosperity on its own. It depends on us, on the choices we make, particularly at certain inflection points in history, particularly when big changes are happening and everything seems up for grabs. In class of 2016, you are graduating at such an inflection point. Since the start of this new millennium, you've already witnessed horrific terrorist attacks and war and a great recession. You've seen economic and technological and cultural shifts that are profoundly altering how we work and how we communicate, how we live, how we form families. The pace of change is not subsiding. It is accelerating. And these changes offer not only great opportunity, but also great peril. Fortunately, your generation has everything it takes to lead this country toward a brighter future. I'm confident that you can make the right choices away from fear and division and paralysis and toward cooperation and innovation and hope. Now, partly I'm confident because on average you're smarter and better educated than my generation. Although we probably had better penmanship. And we're certainly better spellers. We did not have spell check back in my day. You're not only better educated, you've been more exposed to the world. More exposed to other cultures. You're more diverse. You're more environmentally conscious. You have a healthy skepticism for conventional wisdom. So you've got the tools to lead us. And precisely because I have so much confidence in you, I'm not going to spend the remainder of my time telling you exactly how you're going to make the world better. You'll figure it out. You'll look at things with fresh eyes, unencumbered by the biases and blind spots and inertia and general crankiness of your parents and grandparents and old heads like me. But I do have a couple of suggestions that you may find useful as you go out there and conquer the world. Point number one. When you hear someone longing for the good old days, take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. We live in a great nation, and we are rightly proud of our history. We are beneficiaries of the labor and the grit and the courage of generations who came before. But I guess it's part of human nature, especially in times of change and uncertainty, to want to look backwards and long for some imaginary past when everything worked and the economy hummed and all politicians were wise and every child was well-mannered and America pretty much did whatever it wanted around the world. Guess what? It ain't so. The good old days weren't all that good. Yes, there have been some stretches in our history where the economy grew much faster, or when government ran more smoothly. There were moments when, immediately after World War II, for example, or at the end of the Cold War, when the world bent more easily to our will. But those are sporadic, those moments, those episodes. In fact, by almost every measure, America is better, and the world is better than it was 50 years ago, or 30 years ago, or even 8 years ago. And by the way, I'm not set aside 150 years ago, pre-Civil War. There's a whole bunch of stuff there we could talk about. Set aside life in the 50s, when women and people of color were systematically excluded from big chunks of American life. Since I graduated in 1983, which isn't that long ago, I'm just saying. Since I graduated, crime rates, teenage pregnancy, the share of Americans living in poverty, they're all down. The share of Americans with college educations have gone way up. Our life expectancy has as well. Blacks and Latinos have risen up the ranks in business and politics. More women are in the workforce. They're earning more money. Although it's long past time that we pass laws to make sure that women are getting the same pay for the same work as men. Meanwhile, in the 8 years since most of you started high school, we're also better off. You and your fellow graduates are entering the job market with better prospects than any time since 2007. 20 million more Americans know the financial security of health insurance. We're less dependent on foreign oil. We've doubled the production of clean energy. We have cut the high school dropout rate. We've cut the deficit by 2/3. Marriage equality is the law of the land. And just as America is better, the world is better than when I graduated. Since I graduated, an Iron Curtain fell. Apartheid ended. There's more democracy. We virtually eliminated certain diseases like polio. We've cut extreme poverty drastically. We've cut infant mortality by an enormous amount. Now, I say all these things not to make you complacent. We got a bunch of big problems to solve. But I say it to point out that change has been a constant in our history, and the reason America's better is because we didn't look backwards. We didn't fear the future. We seized the future and made it our own. And that's exactly why it's always been young people like you that have brought about big change. Because you don't fear the future. That leads me to my second point. The world is more interconnected than ever before, and it's becoming more connected every day. Building walls won't change that. first responsibility is always the security and prosperity of the United States. And as citizens, we all rightly put our country first. But if the past 2 decades have taught us anything, it's that the biggest challenges we face cannot be solved in isolation. When overseas states start falling apart, they become breeding grounds for terrorists and ideologies of nihilism and despair that ultimately can reach our shores. When developing countries don't have functioning health systems, epidemics like Zika or Ebola can spread and threaten Americans too, and the wall won't stop that. If we want to close loopholes that allow large corporations and wealthy individuals to avoid paying their fair share of taxes, we've got to have the cooperation of other countries in a global financial system to help enforce financial laws. The point is, to help ourselves, we got to help others. Not pull up the drawbridge and try to keep the world out. And engagement does not just mean deploying our military. There are times where we must take military action to protect ourselves and our allies. And we are in awe of, and we are grateful for the men and women who make up the finest fighting force the world has ever known. But I worry if we think that the entire burden of our engagement with the world is up to the 1% who serve in our military. And the rest of us can just sit back and do nothing. They can't shoulder the entire burden. Engagement means using all the levers of our national power and rallying the world to take on our shared challenges. You look at something like trade.